Ladies and gentlemen, bon dia, benvenuto da casa Suiza. Is it good? I have to switch to English afterwards. Of course. I'm the head of Present Switzerland, organizing that house during the WEF, and we're very happy to welcome you all this morning for a topic that is going to be an important one for us in the future. We're working closely with Swissnex in Brazil and with the embassy there. And that house during the WEF is here to facilitate exchanges, networking, and to think about the future. I think this is a great theme to discuss. So enjoy this morning, and happy to listen to you this morning. Have a great panel.
Many thanks, Alexandre. Let's see if my microphone works. Yes? So I will put this here. Good morning, dear President Barroso, dear State Secretary Martina Hirayama, dear Excellencies, dear guests. It's a great pleasure to welcome you here today at the House of Switzerland. And in the very first place, a big thank you to President Switzerland for hosting us so graciously. This morning brings together representatives from academia, from industry, from civil society, and is a discussion that focuses on the role of nature in addressing climate change, with a special focus on, let's say, the Brazilian Amazon. My name is Malin Borg. I'm the CEO of Swissnex in Brazil, an initiative that enables collaboration in education, research, and innovation between Switzerland and Brazil. We're based in Rio and in São Paulo, and it's a great pleasure to organize an event in Switzerland for once, and not in Brazil. And this event actually was born from a serendipitous connection between private investors, private individuals, as well as academia representatives, government representatives, in a dinner. And today we are here all together and are very happy to have this discussion. Some housekeeping. We have a small change of schedule, so we will be starting with some opening remarks from our State Secretary of Education, Research, Innovation. We'll then delve into the fishbowl discussion, and then we will finish with some closing remarks from the Minister for the Environment and Climate Change, Marina Silva. So without much further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the State Secretary for Education, Research and Innovation, Martina Hirayama.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good morning, President Barroso, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the House of Switzerland. In this space for dialogue and reflection, we are hosting a panel discussion today, Amazonia and Beyond, the role of nature in addressing climate change. It's a crucial topic with global implication for our future. This year's activities at the House of Switzerland, at the WEF, are of particular significance, highlighting the importance of the Brazil-Switzerland relationship. As Brazil assumes the presidency of the G20, the country will continue to play a key role in shaping and strengthening global architecture and governance on major international questions. Brazil is Switzerland's most important partner in Latin America, and based on shared values, our countries have fostered intensive relationship in many areas over the last years, including research and innovation. Since the signing of our agreement on cooperation in science and technology in 2009, our joint efforts to strengthen collaboration have been very successful. For example, between 2018 and 2022, the Swiss National Science Foundation supported over 160 research projects with a Swiss-Brazilian collaboration component. The well-established network between our researchers, universities and companies, and of course governments, featuring numerous direct collaboration forms a strong foundation for our relationship. During my last visit in Brazil in July 23, we agreed to further strengthen our cooperation focused on our national centers of competence in research. Thanks to Swissnex, our global network connecting Switzerland and the world in education, research and innovation, Marlene Borg is responsible to go ahead in Brazil with the Swissnex. Thanks to them, we have a strong presence in Brazil to foster these partnerships further also for the future. The collaborative spirit and excellent relationship extended to sustainability with our countries united by a shared commitment to a more sustainable future. Brazil is home to what is often referred to as the lungs of the earth, the Amazon rainforest. Joint action in the context of climate change is crucial, and Switzerland and Brazil collaborate on various instruments related to the Amazon. Switzerland has recently joined the Amazon Fund. Swiss researchers are also at the forefront of studying the role of nature in addressing climate change, and I'm glad to see this excellence so well represented here today. This underscores our commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Climate change is a global issue that affects us all. To effectively address it, government, academia, and industry have to work together across borders. I was impressed about the commitment of Brazil's government, which I was able to get to know last July. Today's event serves as a platform that brings together representatives from all these spheres, promising a fascinating discussion on the critical role of nature and conservation in mitigating climate change. As we engage in this discussion, let us remember that global challenges can only be tackled together through common efforts, shared insights, and collaborative initiatives. Locally, bilaterally, and globally, we can pave the way for a sustainable and resilient future. Thank you very much to Swissnex in Brazil, to ETH Zurich, to the University of Zurich for organizing this important event. I'm looking forward to the discussion, and especially I'm looking forward to the initiatives between actors in Brazil and Switzerland. There's a lot to do, so let's go ahead and do it. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, State Secretary. I think there's no better way to set up the stage for the discussion that is to come. So let me please ask the participants of the fishbowl discussion to come to the stage, as well as the moderator, Joya Deucher, CEO of the Inhablerpunkt.
Great, fantastic. Thank you everybody for being here. A big thank you to our speakers for joining our conversation. We are also, our last speaker, Pue, who was actually very recently added to the program, representative of the indigenous nation of the Puyanawa people, will be joining us as well any moment. I think he is downstairs at the door, and I hope someone is letting him in. And we'll get started already with the conversation. There's leaflets around that actually give you the bios of the different speakers. We are a little bit short on time, so we won't go into the impressive track record and achievements and really interesting work of each and every one of you here on the panel. We'll go straight into the conversation, but feel free to Google them, feel free to look them up, and of course connect with them also afterwards over the lunch, networking lunch. Wonderful. So, Presidente Roberto Barroso, President of the Supreme Court of Brazil, I will start with a question to you. Could you just set the stage here for us about the role of the Amazon in biodiversity general, but also really for Brazil and the world, and why we are even here talking about this topic? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joya. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me introduce myself. I am a judge, and someone might ask, what is a judge doing in an event like this? But truly, the Brazilian Constitution dedicates a lot of attention to the environment and specifically to the Amazon. And the judiciary in Brazil rules in several cases involving climate change and environmental matters. And that's the reason why I have been studying and even writing about this subject. The Amazon, as you might know, is 60% of the Amazon is in Brazil. It goes through 9 countries, but 60% is in Brazil. We have 28 million people living there. I would say the importance of the Amazon, as is fairly well known, is, I would say, 3 basic environmental services that it renders. The first one is the biodiversity. It's the largest concentration of plants and animals on Earth. And we all know that the extinction of a species has unpredictable consequences. The second reason why the Amazon is so important is its role in the cycle of water and in the rain regime, I would say mostly in South America, especially with the flying rivers that go from the Amazons to other parts of South America, irrigating other basins, and, hi Professor Nobre, irrigating other basins, and many people don't perceive that, but the Amazon is indispensable for the agriculture business in Brazil because of the rains it brings to the Midwest, which is the major production area. And the third reason is the role it plays as a carbon storage. And of course, when we tear down the forest, you not only lose the environmental role it plays by storing carbon, but you also release in the atmosphere the carbon that was stored. So there's no way the world can meet, I would say, the commitments of the Paris Agreement without preserving the forest, and more than that, without restoring degraded areas, I would add. So this is basically the importance. And I would like to add, if I may, some of the main risks I think the Amazon is going through right now, which are the environmental crimes that are committed in the region. And they include deforestation. The primary reason for deforestation is cattle ranching, pastures for cattle ranching. So deforestation. Second, forest fires, because they set fire to get rid of the vegetation that they don't want. In the third place, we have illegal logging and timber trade, which is bring many consequences. There is illegal mining. Illegal mining doesn't play a major role in deforestation, but it contaminates the rivers with mercury, and that's a major consequence. And we have land grabbing. There's a dynamic in the deforestation of the Amazon. It starts with illegal logging, and then they set fire, then they establish the pastures, and then they try to legalize the land that was improperly. And one thing that really concerns me as a judge is the fact that environmental crimes are beginning to contaminate politics also, because many of these people play important roles or run for office, which makes it more difficult to fight them. And finally, the risks of a world with Amazon. As Professor Nobre here has studied and explained quite extensively, he believes, based on science, that if deforestation reaches 20 to 25% of the forest.
Sorry.
Hello, welcome, bem-vindos. Prazer. Tudo bom? Vamos vai. So scientists believe that if deforestation reaches 20 to 25% of the forest, and combined with the current levels of global warming, we are going to reach the tipping point, as they call it, the point of no return, with an irreversible savanization of the most part of the forest, and that would be a major problem. So I'll leave for another questions if we have the time. The path is, I think, we need to follow to preserve the forest. But for now, these are my notes on the importance of the Amazon, the risks it's running with environmental crimes, and the risk of reaching a point of no return. So I think these are the reasons why I'm here and why I think this is very important for Brazil and for the world.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, President. I think this is a really important setting the stage so we really understand what's at stake here. And a lot is at stake, not just for Brazil, not just for the region, not just for the indigenous people, but for all of us. And I would like to, you touched on the role of the law and a little bit on the role of politics, and I think we'll get into that after, and we'll definitely end with another conversation with you about climate mitigation and the role of the judges and the judiciary in helping us further these causes. But I would like to actually start with science. We heard from our State Secretary also about the strong collaborations we have between Switzerland and the Amazon region and Brazil as a whole, but also other countries, obviously. Many researchers very engaged around the topic of studying biodiversity, etc. So I would like to give the floor now to Professor Skapman, also president of the University of Zurich, but I would say still professor at heart, who is a specialist in remote sensing. And maybe, Michael, you can shed some light on the role of technology in us understanding better what biodiversity looks like. How can we monitor it? How can we make sure we actually understand what's at stake? And that is being done from space. So we'll take a little bit of a view from space first, and then we'll go closer and closer into the soil with the other speakers. So please, Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joya. Mr. President, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, let me start with one or two trivia in order to set the scene. As a biodiversity expert, you're many times asked, are you inventing higher complications because we already have climate change? Well, the answer to that is very simple. Just assume the Earth without the biosphere. Our average climate would be minus 30 degrees. So you see that the biosphere has a huge regulating factor in the climate system of the world. The second interesting fact is if we would have a biosphere but without the Amazon, we would face a temperature difference of 2 degrees. So the simple fact, if we would cut down all the trees in the Amazon, would mean we are nowhere globally to meet the Paris Agreement. So that's the reason why focus areas in the world are so important. Now, when you come to remote sensing, I would like to mention three important points. First of all, it is important to get a global, coherent, temporally repeating inventory of our biodiversity at regional, national, and global scale. Now, satellites hold the promise that they can do so. And there's fantastic research being done in Brazil on that particular matter, namely to do large-scale mapping. The second is biodiversity inventories are laborsome, they are extremely slow, and they require many, many people with expert knowledge. So the classical inventorying of biodiversity currently takes place at the rate which is outpaced by the change of the actual biodiversity globally. So when we do repeat measurements using conventional ways in going to the field, counting individual species, we will not be able to achieve a global coherent inventory, which prevents comparison, which prevents to derive trends at a global scale. For that, many groups in the world are working on retrieving biodiversity information using satellites or airborne. Now, the promise of remote sensing is not, and to be very clear, is not to replace ground sampling activities. The promise of remote sensing is to get fast inventories of, in particular, functional diversity and genetic diversity, and not species diversity. So many people believe we can use satellites that count individual grasses. I promise you, we are far, far away from this ability. So the interesting notion we currently have, there's about 10 to 15 initiatives globally to measure biodiversity at the global coherent scale using satellite or airborne remote sensing. But also here, we're not trying to replace everyone. What we're trying to do is to use one measurement, which, by the way, has not yet agreed upon, to retrieve biodiversity information from airborne instrumentation. Now let me look quickly on the ground, in particular the Amazon. The land use in the Amazon has drastically changed. Drastically changed not only because there's conversion, as we just heard, but previously land was considered as monolithic or simple use. You had forest, you had agriculture. Today we have multifunctional use. You have species or herbs that may serve health purpose. You have people that enjoy nature. You have conservation activists that try to protect forests. You have commercial companies that try to get a profit out of the particular land use. So there's a lot of conflicting use, and remote sensing data can currently help to address what we call the value of nature. Now, particular technology is currently advancing. The problem in the Amazon we have for high quality retrievals, the clouds are sometimes a little bit a problem. As you may understand, with optical instrumentation, with normal cameras, you cannot see through clouds. So if you have high cloud cover, you need a long time until you get a coherent inventory of an area like the Amazon. But on the other side, there's a lot of people that advancing remote sensing to measure what is on the ground. My last point would be something, I'm sitting next to a judge, that's very important. It's the conformity of remote sensing data. Unfortunately, there were very few legal cases won where remote sensing data was used as evidence. And the reason is, in remote sensing data acquisition, you need a lot of software processing in order to generate what we call conformity. Conformity means compliant retrieval, where you say before it was a tree, afterwards it's, let's say, a land-grabbed area where you can see deforestation. Now, the deforestation part is easy. The tricky part is land ownership. You cannot see from remote sensing who was the person who degraded the land and how can we trace the person that actually degraded the land. So these conformity requirements will still hold up for remote sensing, but I promise you there's many people that work on that. So I'm very optimistic that we will have in very soon time a coherent inventory of the Amazon on the biodiversity.
Thank you so much, President Scottman. It's really, really interesting and important to see how many levels of collaboration are required between the science from space all the way to the judiciaries, not to forget, of course, the local population and communities. But I would like to take the conversation now to below the canopy with Tom. Tom Elliott is the CEO of Restore. And he's actually in part standing in for Tom Crowther, from the chair of the Crowther Lab, who was supposed to be here, but they founded actually together Restore, so now Tom is here as the other Tom, so just consider him the Tom. And Tom Crowther will actually join us later on, so you'll still have a chance to meet him and converse with him as well. But Tom, can you shed some light for us on the role of the Amazon in combating climate change? And take us a little bit into the soil, specifically carbon sequestration, and maybe complement a little bit what Michael said also about what we can see from space and what we cannot understand from space. And how can we make sure that what we see on the ground is understood, is appreciated, and is protected?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much for the introduction. I think both Luis Roberto and Michael have covered a huge amount of the science already. In terms of the value of the Amazon for global warming, perhaps I'll just add one more point on some recently released research by Professor Tom Crowther and a network of over 220 scientists around the world at COP28 last month. They released the Global Integrated Forest Assessment that showed that forests around the world have the potential to draw down 220 gigatons, 220 billion tons of carbon from the atmosphere. About 20% of that is attributable to the Amazon. And what's really interesting is that a huge proportion of that 20% for the Amazon actually comes from conserving what is already there. The forest has so much potential to grow already in it, and about a smaller fraction of that comes from restoring these degraded areas. So overall, this solution is about a third of the carbon that humans have historically emitted into the atmosphere. So it's a really huge potential for climate. There are other benefits to the forest which Luis touched on. The research also showed that, if we lose the Amazon rainforest, we also lose the integrity and resilience of food security, both in North and South America, let alone for farmers in Brazil. So it has huge systemic consequences for many different regions. And in addition, later this year, we're going to be, the lab, Tom Crowther, is going to be releasing research that actually shows the local cooling impacts of the Amazon. So I can't release all of the findings there, but it plays a really important role because of evapotranspiration, because of the cloud cover. I know it's frustrating for you, Michael, but it's great for the cooling effects that happen at those local scales. With regards to your second point on biodiversity and what that means below the canopy surface, I think, the modeling approach that we used to find that huge potential is 8 different modeling approaches. So taking both remote sensing information, but also vast ground inventories that exist around the world where people have gone below the canopy and taken soil carbon measurements or measured the trees manually. And it's so important that we're calibrating all of these different models when we're coming up with this. Sometimes I think when we're talking about biodiversity, it's worth remembering that at one point in time, the planet wasn't always inherently habitable. There was a point where it was sort of barren rock, volcanoes, noxious gases. Humans couldn't have even breathed the air at one point in time. And that is until, bacteria started to spread all over the world and release oxygen into the atmosphere. And it was this relatively simple process that then allowed other oxygen-dependent life forms to emerge. And once these species evolved, each new species then transformed the environment a little more, enabling more new species to emerge in every different corner of the world. And over millions and millions of years, this formed a vast network of interactions where every species depends on other species to survive. They all need each other to live on, to live under, to eat, to pollinate, and even to fight. It's really interesting talking to the scientists in our lab. When they put 2 fungi on a petri dish in the research lab, one of them almost always immediately kills the other, and the whole system collapses. But when they add a 3rd species, that new species will attack the dominant individual, enabling all species to survive. It's like a multiplayer rock, paper, scissors, where the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and it's all this, competing interactions which, where life leads to more life. And that really is what the Amazon is. It's representing hundreds of millions of years of this evolution. And because we have all of those diverse interactions going on, we're storing, as a result, huge amounts of carbon. It wasn't that the Amazon was built for carbon storage and then biodiversity formed around it. It's that biodiversity was the goal, and as a result, we've got this huge carbon. And I think when it comes to restoring forests going forward, we have to be prioritizing biodiversity as the metric, and that's really where Restore comes into play. We are democratizing all of the biodiversity data sets, the remote sensing information, and a lot of the ground-sourced information to communities on the ground that can start to quantify their impacts on biodiversity. And we really think the future of this is now connecting them to economic opportunities that are incentivizing biodiversity, because that really is the way forward, we think, in terms of restoring these ecosystems. I'll stop there.
Wonderful, thank you so much, Tom. And I think what you're describing, and for me, is a very beautiful picture. Actually, is a beautiful picture of this interconnectedness at the smallest level that takes us to the largest level as a human species as well. And taking it to the human species, Hosanna, you are a researcher, you're a TV presenter, but you're also a climate activist. And you have also a very strong engagement in integrating the most vulnerable populations, in formulating climate strategies that work, because those are the people that can also really make a difference. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what you think the role is of these populations?
Yes, of course. I know you guys received the paper introducing us, but let me just add one thing. I'm the result of good public policies. I'm a black woman from a favela, Brazilian favela, low-income communities. So I got into the university because of good public policies. I actually learned how to talk this well in English because of a public policy. So I'm the result of two simple things: education and opportunity. So doing that, I achieve, right now I'm pursuing a master's degree in public policy and government and researching the impact of climate change in marginalized, mostly black and low-income communities. What we saw in the results was that regions with most concentrations of black communities, low-income communities, and indigenous communities as well are the most exposed to heat waves. This is obvious for us that lives in favela. We have to deal with this in a most exposed way, in a most vulnerable way than high-income communities. But the science, we still didn't progress in that way, and we need to prove what we say, right? So that's our achievement. We try to prove that reality. And I do that because I live that myself. As a favela, as a person that lived on favela, I have the living experience that what Rio de Janeiro is going through right now. Rio de Janeiro is living environmental disasters right now. There are hundreds of people out of the house without nowhere to go because of an environmental disaster. And I live that myself in my community with my family. We lost everything. And we continue to lose everything every single year. So I started asking myself, why? Why we do live that every single year and nothing changed? And I actually find out that one of the most important things to change that reality is to have social participation, social engagement, is to call up these communities to the table to discuss and find the right solutions. Because if we don't talk to the people that actually live that, we are not going to build a public policy that is actually going to achieve a real result. We need to have this conversation. And right now, our channels, we still have to develop these channels to have an effective conversation with marginalized, mostly black and indigenous community. So I want just to finalize my comment, I want to add one thing. The United Nations recently achieved a really good goal about youth engagement, and Brazil needs to develop that. We need to get the youth involved. I'm a 26-old woman, so I'm already doing a lot. We have a really strong network of young people wanting to do the change in Brazil. So we need to call up this community. We need to make them part of this change, because we are going to be who is going to face the consequences of the decisions that are made today here at this table and in another important table. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Hosanna. And your points really remind me of a presentation actually by the director of the Club of Rome just 2 days ago, and she was really highlighting, and she's, as the president of the Club of Rome, she's coming from the environmental side. she was highlighting the importance of social equality to tackle this issue, and that without social equality, we cannot tackle this issue, which is one that needs everybody on board. So I congratulate you on the work that you do, starting with the youth. I think that's extremely important. And you did talk about the indigenous people, and we are so lucky, and thank you to Indrani, who actually brought the Puyawana and his daughter, Hosanna, to the World Economic Forum. You're a filmmaker, and Puya is very engaged around questions of indigenous rights and reclaiming territory, the territory of his people. And I would like to ask you, what do we as a global community need to do better to protect the people like you who are most connected to their land and understand the value of their land and also know how to take care of it? And what is your call to this audience as well? Obrigada.
Ok. Eu quero aqui agradecer em nome do nosso povo, né, no Acre, no Brasil.
Just wanted to thank everybody here in the name of my people from the state of Acre in Brazil.
Quero que agradecer a minha filha, né, a Rosane, que chegou aqui também junto a esse país, e agradecer muito aos líderes desse país.
I also wanted to thank my daughter, Rosani, who came here with me to this country. I want to thank all the leadership of this country as well.
Eu quero também aqui agradecer aos líderes brasileiros, que eu estou vendo também a ministra, né, e outro também aqui nesse palco, que todos sejam muito felizes a esse encontro.
I also want to thank the Brazilian authorities here, the Minister of Environment who's here, President Barroso as well.
E outros líderes também que estão aqui, como escritor, como... não vou descrever, mas todos são importantes para essa vida.
And all the other leaders here, all in their different disciplines, everyone's important in this life.
Estamos aqui com uma missão de nos aliar nesses últimos tempos, o que está acontecendo.
We're here on a mission to align ourselves with what has been happening in the recent times.
Porque não é um problema de uma empresa, não é um problema político, não é um problema de uma comunidade, são dificuldades que estão acontecendo na vida que chegou o momento.
Because it's not just a problem of one company, of one indigenous community. It's a problem of our times that transcends all political boundaries as well.
Eu faço trabalho na nossa comunidade de revitalização cultural, de proteção do território, de plantar, de cuidar e também da vida.
I do a work at my people and my territory of revitalization of culture, of taking care of the people, reforesting.
Eu, graças a Deus, estudei dentro de uma universidade também, sou formado em biologia, ciências biológicas.
I also, thanks to God, it was the chance to get a university degree in biology.
Mas é direito, não tão uma responsabilidade de cada de cuidar do que está acontecendo.
And it's a right and a responsibility, at the same time for everyone to take care about what is happening.
Porque o mundo vivenciou hoje uma rapidez e avanço de muitas coisas que eu não vou descrever.
Because the world has been going through an acceleration of many changes that I won't take up the time to describe here.
Mas só digo que ainda o que tem, nós temos que cuidar.
But just want to say that what we still have, we have to take care of.
Porque o que passou, passou, mas vamos ver o que tem.
Because what happened and what passed, passed.
O que nós herdamos da nossas ancestralidade, da sabedoria, das visões, do que tem aqui hoje por conta da nossa ancestralidade.
Because we, through honoring our ancestry, we still are able to look at, the good things that we have and to work with now.
Então, os nossos territórios que ainda estão vivos, eles são a nossa ancestralidade.
And so also the territories that we have that are still alive and which we live, they are part of our ancestry.
Os territórios indígenas, os territórios atlânticos, os mares, as neves, todos eles são ancestrais.
The indigenous territories, the forest, the Atlantic forest as well, the oceans, the snowy lands, all of this is part of our ancestry.
E dos meus maiores sonhos e desejos é preservar o que ainda tem de floresta ainda em pé.
And one of my biggest dreams and desires is to support and preserve what is still standing in terms of forest.
Porque nós, indígena, e todos nós, seres humanos, nós vamos deixar um legado a essa geração, ao planeta.
Because we indigenous peoples are in a position and we want to leave a legacy for humanity on this planet.
O mundo vai continuar num desenvolvimento, eu não posso dizer como, mas todo mundo sabe.
And the world will continue its development. I can't say exactly how, but we all know.
Mas há uma necessidade de todo dia comer, beber e se desenvolver e fazer aquilo que cada um tem que fazer.
And there is a need for each of us each day to be able to drink, to eat, and develop the activities of what we feel is needed to be done.
Então, dentro dessa sustentabilidade e necessidade do ser humano, o mundo evolui.
So within that necessity and ability of humans, the world will develop.
Mas hoje nós temos que levar os nossos melhores pensamentos de pedir ao grande Espírito a nossa proteção e uma saúde e muita sabedoria para cada um de nós.
And we would have to continue also asking Great Spirit for a lot of wisdom, knowledge, health, to be able to project good things into the world and positive thoughts.
Hoje está acontecendo uma necessidade um projeto que nós estamos buscando de revitalizar o reencontro do nosso território sagrado.
And so today, also from my people, we have a project that we're working on, which is to look to the re-encounter and revitalization of our people through connecting with our ancestral land.
Estamos aqui com a Maidrane, com outro grupo que nós estamos apresentando o nosso projeto, o qual muitos de vocês conhecem.
And we're here with Indrani, other partners, to present this project that many of you may already know.
É uma terra que foi dos nossos ancestrais no passado e hoje nós estamos buscando de volta.
It's a land that was pertained to our ancestors that is now we are looking to get it back.
Que também é uma ancestralidade também de vocês, porque somos seres humanos.
Which is also in the ancestry of you. We are all human beings.
Então a gente tem aqui um tempo e eu quero agradecer muito a todos vocês e desejar esse encontro muita felicidade, muita saúde.
So thank you for the time. Also want to wish to everybody much health, much joy and good luck.
E que o grande Espírito nos proteja todos nós e continue essa vida tão com muito prazer.
And may the Great Spirit bless you and protect you with.
E vamos nos unir, vamos lutar pela nossa vida.
And let's fight for our lives.
Muito obrigada. Muito obrigada.
Obrigado.
Thank you so much, and I believe you have an exhibition. Tem uma exibição amanhã que vai abrir, né, sobre o. Maybe you want to say 2 words about it, so people who are interested can go.
Yes,
see it.
We actually have a screening of a film that we're working on together. We have a trailer tonight at Land Space Gala, and also we're going to be traveling the world with this story. So it's an evolving story. We're still filming. We're filming right now. And we are all part of this evolving story. It's called The Regeneration Generation. And I want to thank Fred Sau and Shavalit Sau here for their support. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I need a quick time check, Malin. How are we doing? Because I would like to open it up now. We have a really, really interesting audience. And before we get to the closing words from the minister, I would really like to give a chance to some of you in the audience to ask questions, to talk about the work that you do, what you're engaged in, what you're involved with. And maybe I'll just start and cold call Carlos Nobre, Dr. Carlos Nobre, who is an eminent researcher in biodiversity and in the field, very closely connected to the Amazon. Maybe share some impressions or responses or additional complementing insights from your work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good afternoon to all. Thank you very much. We had very good discussions and information here I'm not going to repeat. I just want to say, as Minister Barroso said, the Amazon is very close to a tipping point. So we really have to move urgently to avoid. Then we need to get to zero deforestation, forest degradation, wildfires. And Minister Marina Silva certainly will talk about the success that the Amazonian countries, including Brazil, are going in that direction. But we need nature-based solutions. That's what I would like to say, in partnership with many countries, with Swiss, scientific community, but also the investment sector, financial world, the private sector, all over the world we need. And I would say just briefly 2 initiatives that Brazil is taking now. One is the so-called forest restoration. Brazil's development bank, BNDES, launched at COP28 this huge forest restoration project. It is to restore 24 million hectares between now and 2050, 6 million hectares between now and 2030. This is $10 billion necessary. All the indigenous people, Afro-descendants, riverine communities, local communities will have donations from the bank for that. And also, a lot of that restoration will be to produce so-called agroforestry systems, which have a tremendous socio-economic potential. Just to give you brief figures, cattle ranches, $100 profit per hectare, soy, 200, 300, agroforestry systems in the Amazon, $300 to $700 profit, and they hire 20 more workers compared to cattle. So just to give you, this is the way, but what about markets? Do we have markets, global markets for all these tremendous indigenous people who use more than 2,000 products of the social biodiversity with their knowledge? No, we still don't have markets. So that's a big challenge. And just to finish, let me say, the remote sensing is very important. For instance, Brazil Development Bank 2 weeks ago refused to fund larger number, 70, 80 cattle ranchers, because the remote sensing showed it was all illegal deforestation. So remote sensing is also important. And last but not least, I also want to say biodiversity. We still have the highest biodiversity, including microorganisms. It's a mystery why we never had a pandemic originating in the Amazon, but the risks are there. So we have to learn much more about tremendous biodiversity of the Amazon, including the very complex, non-linear interaction between species in the forest. So I would finish by the message we are saying, the science is saying that message. This is the Amazon we want. This is really, let's save the Amazon, let's save all the Amazonian people. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, doutor. Thank you so much. I will pass the microphone to you. You had some, oops, I'm so sorry.
So hi everyone, I'm Luana Genot. I work with inclusion and ESG, and also I'm part of the advisory board for the Brazilian presidency. I work closely with Minister Marina too. So I think one other thing that I want to highlight here is something that Ozana brought in a very good way, and also Pui brought also, it's participation. We really need more Black and indigenous communities to be part of the decision-making process when it comes to investments. Brazil is having huge investments now for climate, for energy transitions, but we also need more participation of people who are from Black and Brazilian community, Black and indigenous communities in Brazil to participate in this strategy, in the strategy design for those funds. So my call here would be, can we work together with potential investors and also to BNDES or other banks, and also with the lawmakers such as Minister Barroso and universities, to actually bring to the table more Black and indigenous people so they can also help to highlight those things. So I'm also working with the Rio Council. We are hosting G20, and hopefully we can build events throughout the year to highlight documentaries like you are working on, and other narratives for Black and indigenous people, so they can be part of conference like that. They can be part of the decision-making decision-making process. That's very important. Otherwise, you know, we'll keep on going the decision-making process as a very white Western, but we have space here to bring more people on board. So we need to work on that. We know that President Lula, Minister Marina are very committed with that, but it's a global call to have more participation. So we better have like a broader, inclusive discussion on Amazon and other biosystems. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. It's important to involve the many, many different facets of these lived experiences and make sure that the solutions that are formulated are representative of as many lived experiences as possible. And I think we have time for one last question. And if I may just steer it a little bit, maybe I'm going the right direction then, because I know there's several people invested in nature-based finance in the room, or sustainability financing, and I would find it very interesting specifically because Dr. Carlos Nobre also mentioned that. You mentioned representation in the boards of those financial institutions, so maybe we can get a perspective more from the financial sector as well, because we do need money for these problems to be solved. And maybe, Rodrigo, you want to take over?
Thank you. My name is Rodrigo Sá. I co-founded a venture builder and an investment fund in Saudi Arabia. I'm a Brazilian, but I've been living abroad for many years. And I think that the main word for me here is collaboration, right? It's about each and every one of us doing our part and being able to understand what's actually on the table, right? So I just learned, for instance, that from the ministry, they are actually involved in multiple projects in the Amazon. So now actually I can actually understand what's going on and see how we can bring investments into the region. So I think it's just a message actually, not a question, but that it's each and every one of us had to go on part. Yeah, thanks.
Bringing people together is so important. I mean, we also sometimes look at events and said, what's the impact? What's the meaning of this? But it is an opportunity to get into contact and hear different perspectives and for things to emerge. Is there a response or an answer here in the audience, please, in the panel?
Thank you very much. So the University of Zurich is the founder of the World Biodiversity Forum. The World Biodiversity Forum takes place every second year. This year, in June, here in Davos, we expect more than 1,000 participants. Now, this is not a scientific conference only. We have policymakers, and to our big surprise, we have several sessions, roughly 5, on financing, on impact financing, nature-based solutions. So everyone who is interested can contact me. But apart from that commercial, I would like to make one statement in response to what Puri said. So we should all be very concerned that despite we do have science that objectively allows to measure biodiversity, biodiversity has the largest cultural background of all sciences. And if you don't believe that, I give you a homework. Why don't you discuss during lunch what plant, a single plant, would you draw if you had to name the most important plant to yourselves? I guarantee you that with all the people we have here, everyone would very likely draw a different plant, and people from the same cultural background are more likely to draw the same plant. So just be aware that biodiversity research has an emotional and a cultural background which we never should neglect. Also, despite science that claims to be objective, we are still concerned with the cultural background of biodiversity.
Thank you so much. And as much as we actually are now missing out on the last question about the judiciary, and I think there would be so much more to say, I think these are really beautiful closing words. And I'm sorry that I have to omit that question so we can give the floor to the Ministra do Meio Ambiente, Marina Silva, to close. And after that, we do have a conversation, and maybe there is still time to also hear some of your words and about the role of the judiciary and some of the initiatives that you're involved with around strengthening the judiciary in the environmental questions. But I think we have to close it, right, Marlene? Sorry. This is the WEF, so it's like one thing after the other. So thank you so much to all of you.
Many thanks to this wonderful panel. As you said, I think we have material here for a 2-day symposium. Feel like we just scratched the surface, but we do not have that much time. Lunch is around the corner. And we would not want to miss out on some closing remarks from the Minister for the Environment and Climate Change of Brazil, Minister Marina Silva. Please.
Bem, acho que ainda é bom dia.
I think it's still good morning.
Infelizmente, as agendas vão se acumulando. Eu perdi algumas das falas, o que foi um prejuízo para mim, não ter ouvido a fala de algumas pessoas, mas, sobretudo, aqui do ministro Barroso, nosso presidente do Supremo. É muito importante esse debate que está sendo feito sobre a Amazônia. Desculpa.
Unfortunately, the agendas in Davos get sometimes jammed, and unfortunately, I missed some of the remarks previously, especially from Minister Barroso, but it's a great pleasure to be with you here.
Bem, como eu tenho a tradução, eu vou tentar ser bem breve, porque são 5 minutos, com a tradução vira 10, ou vira 3 minutos e meio. Então, 2 minutos e meio, quer dizer. Bem, acho que a Amazônia tem uma importância que já foi colocada aqui por todos, e, obviamente, que hoje uma das grandes questões envolvidas com a Amazônia é os esforços para que ela continue sendo a Amazônia.
I think the importance of the Amazon has been raised by everyone in their remarks, but one of the most important issues in our agenda today is to ensure that the Amazon continues to be the Amazon.
Toda a sua importância já foi colocada pela ciência, pelas populações tradicionais, pelo ministro Barroso, e eu vou me ater um pouco mais aos esforços para preservá-la.
So the importance has been highlighted by representatives from science, from indigenous community, by Judge Barroso, so I will consider to what we need to tackle.
Nós já temos uma perda de algo em torno de 18 a 20% da cobertura florestal da Amazônia.
We have already lost roughly 18 to 20% of the forest cover of the Amazon.
E isso já nos coloca muito próximo do ponto de não retorno, que seria alcançarmos algo em torno de 25% de perda da cobertura vegetal.
And this puts us very close to what would be the tipping point in the Amazon, which would be the loss of roughly 25%.
Em função disso, a ciência, os esforços governamentais, da sociedade civil, das populações tradicionais, têm, ao longo dos anos, conseguido alguns resultados positivos, mas que têm sido interrompidos e criado grandes problemas na continuidade das políticas que interrompem o ciclo de destruição.
Both within science and government, civil society, and indigenous people, they have all achieved very positive results, but these have been interrupted due to the problems of the lack of continuity in our
Em
efforts.
2003, quando fui ministra pela primeira vez, junto com minha equipe, no governo do presidente Lula, fizemos um plano que conseguiu reduzir, no caso da Amazônia brasileira, o desmatamento em 83% por quase uma década.
In 2003, when I took office in the first period of President Lula's government, we established a plan that managed to reduce deforestation by 83% during almost a decade.
Criamos também algo em torno de 24 milhões de hectares de áreas protegidas, a maior parte na Amazônia.
We've also created around 24 million hectares of protected areas, most of it in the Amazon.
esses esforços foram sendo diminuídos e nos 4 anos anteriores ao governo do presidente Lula, o desmatamento voltou a crescer, se interrompeu a criação de unidades de conservação de terras indígenas.
These efforts were gradually, they lost steam, they were reduced, and during the 4 years of the previous government, there was a significant rupture with the establishment of unities of conservation and in broader efforts of conservation.
Nesse terceiro governo do presidente Lula, retomamos o plano, atualizamos o plano, e nesse primeiro ano já conseguimos uma redução de desmatamento de 50%.
So in this third Lula administration, we have updated the plan for the protection, conservation, and development of the Amazon region. It has been updated, and through this, we have managed to reduce deforestation by 50% last year.
Evitamos lançar na atmosfera algo em torno de 200 milhões de toneladas de CO2.
We have avoided the emission of around 200 million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere.
Mas, para proteger a Amazônia, temos que ir além das ações de comando e controle.
But to protect the Amazon, we have to go beyond the activities of command and control.
É preciso ter um plano de desenvolvimento sustentável para a região.
We need to have a plan for sustainable development for the region.
Que seja uma ação conjunta dos países amazônicos.
And it has to be a joint action by the Amazon countries.
E no caso do Brasil, que tem a maior parte da floresta, a responsabilidade é maior.
And in the case of Brazil, who holds the largest share of the forest, the responsibility is much larger.
Por isso que o compromisso do governo do presidente Lula é de desmatamento zero até 2030, não apenas na Amazônia, mas em todo o Brasil.
This is why the commitment of the government of President Lula is to have zero deforestation by 2030, not only in the Amazon, but in the whole of Brazil.
Promover a desintrusão do garimpo ilegal, das atividades criminosas dentro das terras indígenas.
To promote the removal of the intruders in indigenous areas and units of conservation.
O que é desafio muito grande.
Which is a major challenge.
Nesse sentido, estamos trabalhando em parceria com diferentes setores, a sociedade civil, comunidade científica, setor empresarial que tem uma consciência de sustentabilidade e, principalmente, olhando para as coisas que dão certo a partir do olhar dos povos tradicionais.
So in this sense, we have been establishing meaningful partnerships with civil society, business communities, scientific communities, and most of all, looking at what has to success cases, and especially with a view of the knowledge of traditional communities.
É uma região muito rica com muitas desigualdades sociais.
This is a very rich region with many inequalities.
Portanto, qualquer investimento terá que olhar para a promoção do combate à desigualdade social.
So therefore, all investments they have to look into tackling inequality.
Respeito e proteção aos povos tradicionais.
Respect and protection of traditional peoples.
Uma economia que seja diversificada.
A diversified economy.
Aonde não se vá pelo caminho dos cultivos homogêneos.
Where we don't focus on monocultures.
E, sobretudo, os investimentos em bioeconomia.
And above all, investments in bioeconomy.
Em turismo.
In tourism.
Bioindústria.
Bioindustry.
E atividades que mantenham a floresta em pé.
And in activities that help maintain the forest cover.
É uma agenda de preservação.
It is an agenda of conservation.
De restauração.
Restoration.
E de uso sustentável.
And sustainable use.
Eu agradeço a oportunidade. E para mim, que sou amazônida, eu a vejo nessa ideia de para além de ser um grande estoque de carbono, de ser um grande sumidouro de carbono, ou de ter algum segredo que possa ser utilizado em benefício de nós mesmos, além de que isso é importante.
Or of having different secrets that could be used for our benefits.
Eu a vejo como uma explosão de vida.
I see it as an explosion of life.
De cores.
Of colors.
De aromas.
Of smells.
De sons.
Of sounds.
de coisas que têm valor ontológico
of things that have value into themselves
e que devem ser preservadas,
and that they should be preserved,
independente de ter qualquer valor fiduciário.
independently of having any
Sobretudo
price.
seus povos que têm conhecimentos milenares
Most of all, the peoples with
associado a esses
millennial
recursos
traditional,
naturais.
Attached to these resources.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada, ministra, por essas palavras muito importantes. Quer? Sim? The minister is open to two questions. So if you have a question, yes, please.
Hello, thank you so much. It's Fiona Bannister from decarbonize.org, and I'd like to thank, first of all, our Indigenous leaders that are here, and his beautiful daughter, Nindrani, and those that are bringing voices. Marina Silva, I wish to ask you a question about the context of the value of biodiversity, and that will be paid back to the Indigenous people through land entitlement, through biodiversity credits that are being paid to them directly, and how can we help to facilitate and finance and support the propagation of their knowledge to all of us. Thank you.
Eu fui a autora da primeira lei de acesso aos recursos genéticos da biodiversidade brasileira e justa partilha de benefício para as populações tradicionais e os povos indígenas.
So I was the first one to table a legislation in Brazil to ensure the sharing of benefits for traditional communities in Brazil.
É fundamental que iniciativas legais dessa natureza sejam estabelecidas em todo o país, todos os países amazônicos, e que a gente evite algo que pode ser muito danoso para o saber dessas populações tradicionais, que é o sequenciamento genético que está sendo debatido no âmbito da CDB.
So for us, we believe that's very important to have all Amazon countries with similar pieces of legislation, and also to avoid the pitfalls in the debate of digital sequencing, which is taking place in the CDB.
Outra coisa importante é fazer uma parceria com a ciência e fazer com que esses dois olhares, essas duas ciências possam conversar.
Another important issue is to establish further partnerships with science and to ensure that these two types of science can have fruitful dialogues.
Se você for fazer uma pesquisa para encontrar algum princípio ativo que possa levar algum medicamento, algum cosmético, alguma coisa, você precisaria de 10.000 amostras sendo pesquisadas.
If you were to research an active principle, you would need 10,000 different samples.
Se você parte dos conhecimentos tradicionais, você precisa apenas de 1.000.
If you start from traditional knowledge, you only need 1,000 samples.
É uma ciência que reduz em 9.000 amostras e não é valorizada. Ninguém quer pagar pelos conhecimentos tradicionais associados.
It's a science that reduces in 9,000 the samples that we need, and nobody's willing to pay for the ecosystem services they provide.
Isso é uma grande injustiça.
This is very unfair.
Many thanks. One last, excuse me, I think we have to give the floor here.
Bom dia, Pietro Lazzaro, embaixador da Suíça no Brasil. Ministra, é uma honra tê-lo aqui, o presidente Barroso, o professor Nobre e a grande delegação brasileira. I switch into English now. Two remarks. The first one, we have a fantastic opportunity. It's the COP30. And this is a great opportunity in many areas, but as a donor, Switzerland just entered into the Fundo Amazônia. Fundo Amazônia is not the only tool, but it's the most important. On the same time, it is key that we coordinate with other existent instruments to protect the forest, but also to find solution for the people living into the forest. And my second remark, yes, the private sector. We have, in our case, more than 500 companies. Part of these companies are also active in the forest. So it's key that the private sector not only make good money in Brazil, but also contribute to this fundamental balance between protecting the forest and giving a perspective to the more than 30 million people that are living in the forest and with the forest. Obrigado.
Acho que é mais um comentário. Eu concordo que temos que dar alternativa. A Amazônia tem cerca de, no caso da Amazônia brasileira, nós temos algo em torno de 29 milhões de pessoas. A Amazônia brasileira tem a maior parte das riquezas e do território, no entanto, representa 9% do PIB brasileiro. Mas, desculpa.
Yeah, I completely agree that we have to provide alternatives. In the Brazilian Amazon, we have roughly 28 million inhabitants, and the Brazilian Amazon is responsible, it holds the large part of the riches of the forest, of the Amazon forest as a whole. But nevertheless, the region represents only 9% of Brazilian GDP.
Mas a maior riqueza da Amazônia não é esses 9% do PIB. É que ela é responsável por 75% do PIB da América do Sul, que está relacionado às chuvas que ela produz.
But the greatest riches of the Amazon, it's not the 9% of GDP that it represents, but the fact that 75% of GDP of South America is directly linked to the rain patterns that are caused by the Amazon.
Portanto, qualquer investimento que for feito deve considerar, em primeiro lugar, a preservação da própria floresta sob pena de destruir a galinha dos ovos de ouro. Muito obrigada.
So all these investments, they need to take into account, first and foremost, the need to preserve that which is our golden goose, the main source, our main source of richness. Thank you.
Eu peço desculpas ao tradutor.
Muito obrigada, Ministra. Thank you very much. In the name of democracy, we'll have to close it here because I didn't mention this at the beginning of the event, but we had enormous amounts of registrations for this event, 200, and we had to hand-pick, actually, all of you who are here today. So everyone who is here today has a connection with the Amazon, with nature finance, with the role of nature in addressing climate change. So this hour that comes now is actually almost as important as our panel discussion. It's the time of connecting, of trying to shape what Ambassador Lazzari mentioned, the road to COP30. We say it will be in Belém in November 2025, and beyond the symbolism of this being in the Amazon, it's really an opportunity for this topic to be shaped in unison with international and local voices. So please use this time, enjoy the Swiss food from Grison, and talk to each other. Thank you so much to the event organizers, to ETH Zurich, to the University of Zurich, to Pedro and Rodrigo, to everyone who has made this possible. Thank you so much.